right, I think, okay, we feel good about starting now? Okay, so welcome everyone to this second Diverse We Run panel discussion. My name is Carolyn Su, and I'm the creator and founder of the Instagram account Diverse We Run. And I'm just so excited to have our awesome panelists here with us today, and especially just talking about the topic of mental health. The Asians for Mental Health Instagram account recently posted this question of what happens when you try to disclose mental health struggles with people around you. And there were many answers, but overall there was this theme of people being dismissed or told you'll figure things out, or oh, you're just making it up, or you're being too sensitive, or to just keep pressing on and to stop feeling sad and nervous and focus on just being happy. And I think we can all relate to those types of responses, and that is part of the reason why it is difficult to share any internal mental health type struggles or challenges when you don't necessarily feel like the people around you would even understand. And also just in light of the fact that, well, one, I think it is International Mental Health Awareness Month, but also in light of the fact that we've been in the year 2020, and it's no surprise that anxiety and depression and a lot of mental health issues have really exponentially increased over the last 6 to 8 months. And it's just a very important topic that we need to normalize talking about. And we are really glad now to have our 4 panelists here today. And also a thank you to Marcus Brown, who is the co-host with me today. And Marcus is going to introduce himself in just a few minutes. First, I just wanted to introduce everyone to each of our panelists here, starting with Dr. Jenny Wang, who is a clinical psychologist, and she is the creator and founder of the Instagram account Asians for Mental Health. And then we also have Sabrina Pace-Humphreys. She's an ultra and trail runner in the UK. She's a coach and a physical therapist, and she's a co-founder of Black Trail Runners. And then we also have Maurice Lowman, who is also based locally here to me in the Massachusetts area. He's an entrepreneur. He's a run streaker. I think today is day 1,700 something of run streaking, right? Yeah.
1759.
1759. There
Yes.
we go. Run streaking.
But it's not completed yet.
Oh.
It's not completed yet.
Is that why you're in the parking lot?
Before midnight. Before midnight, I'll get it done.
Okay. And then we also have Sha Hussain. He is the creator of the wellness movement in the UK and Be More You movement, and he builds basically his running community builds mental health and wellness in companies and different workspaces. So each of them will give their own introduction. And right now I also just want to introduce Marcus Brown. I think basically everybody here probably already knows him as the Marathon Marcus, and he also just broke 3 hours in the marathon. Woohoo! Running a marathon in 2:56:19, I believe.
Yeah.
And he's also the host of a Runner's Life podcast, and he is also a co-founder of Black Trail Runners. So thank you all again for being here, and right now I'll let Marcus segue into introductions.
Thank you for the introduction, Carolyn. It's a real pleasure to be on this channel, this platform, to speak with you and everyone else. I know you've introduced me. I'm a runner from London. I'm also a co-founder of the Black Trail Runners, as you've said. I'm host of a Runner's Life podcast and co-host of the Checkpoint podcast. And like you said, well, today we are joined by 4 voices within the running community that we're really excited to speak with. With that being said, let's let the guests introduce themselves. So let's hear from the guests. Jenny, please, can you start?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Wang. Like Carolyn mentioned, I'm a clinical psychologist with a private practice here in Houston, Texas. And I specialize in working with women's mental health kind of concerns across the lifespan. So yeah, I'm really passionate about bringing mental health into more inclusive communities. The Asian American community is really struggles with the stigma of mental health. And so that's one of the things I'm really passionate about, is really bringing kind of Western psychology ideas into more spaces where people can feel accessible to them.
Good stuff. Thank you. Let's move on to Sabrina.
Hello everyone, my name is Sabrina Pace-Humphreys. I am a ultra runner, a trail ultra runner, and mother of 4 and grandmother of 2. I am co-founder of the Black Trail Runners. I started running 11 years ago, mainly to lose weight. I was 5 stone overweight after the birth of my 4th child, and also to help me to cope with the postnatal depression that I was suffering then. My journey is that I live with anxiety and depression, and I use running as one of the key tools in order to help me to navigate life on a daily basis. I'm very, very passionate about empowerment and representation of Black people in trail running. And I'm really, really glad to be here to talk about mental health, talk about wellness for BIPOC people, and yeah, answer any questions that you have.
Sabrina, thanks for the introduction. Now let's move to Maurice.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. Maurice Lowman here from Rhode Island. Hopefully folks can hear me okay. I'm outside. It was just really, really grateful to be on here. I'm a huge advocate for mental health, hope, and recovery. My story is overcoming a hardcore drug addiction with running and with the running community. And my story includes benefiting from being included in the running community. So I'd like to shine some light on that when given the chance today. And I'm just really grateful to be on here. I use my voice to just, I have a passion for inner city youth, to let them know that there's other options other than any type of street life that includes drug dealing. And then with my story, it turned into drug abuse. So very vocal on the addiction front. And I have a passion to reach the teenagers. As far as mental health, and recently I've shed more light on the fact that I'm not the only one that struggles with daily anxiety and depression and things like that. I don't consider myself to struggle with it to the severity of some others. But I want to use my voice and my positivity and my passion for being just grateful to be here and being an overcomer in the addiction front, to let others know, hey, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. It's all of us. Let's do this together. Let's spread love. Let's not hate. Let's not judge. You never know what somebody else is going through, that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to be here. Might not be as polished on the educated front as all y'all folks, but thank you for having me.
Your experience is equally as valid as everyone else's, Maurice. So really looking forward to hearing your experiences. And let's move on to Sha.
Hi everyone, my name is Sha Hussain. I'm from the East End of London, Hackney. I'm a runner. I've been running long distance for about 14 years now. Ran my first marathon in 2006, the London Marathon. I'm also a member of Run Dem Crew, which is a running community in London, one of the original urban running collectives out there, along with Vid Runners in New York and many others that are around the world. I'm also the founder of Be More You, which is a community of runners passionate about community and mental health. We're on a mission to raise awareness for mental health in the running community and provide positive guidance to runners and running crews.
Thanks, Sha, for your introduction. Now we're going to move on to the questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Carolyn.
Thank you all for already sharing, starting to vulnerably share, even in your introductions. So our first question today is, what barriers have you faced in your running journey related to your race, ethnicity, or cultural background? Jenny, I think you actually already alluded to some of that. And why don't you go ahead and answer first?
Sure. I think when I think about kind of race or cultural barriers, I mean, for one, I think as an Asian American, we grow up being told we're not really athletic. I'll just put it out there. There's this sense where our parents don't really value that so much as other aspects of our lives. And so I remember when I was younger wanting to play sports, and my parents were like, meh, there are other things, right? Play instruments or focus on school. And so I think it wasn't until I actually started, getting involved in athletics and then running in college, where I felt like maybe this could be part of my identity, right? Where race, or not race, but exercise and these things could be part of who I was. I think in current day, I live in Texas, which has its benefits and also disadvantages. I live in a pretty conservative area and neighborhood. So often I'm the only person of color running on my street and in my neighborhood. And with COVID and all of the rhetoric that's coming out about Asian Americans, I have to admit, like, I am kind of scared at times running. I've thought about bringing mace on my runs because I just don't know. And I don't live in a really rough neighborhood. I live in actually a really kind of predominantly white neighborhood. But it's the Trump signs on every, in front of every house. It's the feeling of being other in a community in which it doesn't really reflect who I am and my identity. So I think I feel that. And yet when I run, I feel really empowered. And so when I begin running, I remind myself that my identity is so much part of who I am and that I should be proud of that. And even if I am other in these spaces, that I exist here for a reason. And so that's how I see the intersection of kind of my race and in my running currently.
I love that you said, I exist here for a reason. And I just wonder how much, how many of us can take that with us in all the spaces that we show up into, in being able to take ownership of, like, I do exist here for a reason, and I don't want to allow fear to necessarily prevent me from taking hold of that identity. Right? Thank you for sharing. Sabrina, why don't you go next?
I think, I really thought about this question, and where I live in the UK, I live in a very small countryside town, and growing up, I was the target because I was the only Black girl in this town. I was racially abused, physically, verbally, for years and years and years, and it formed a massive part of my formative years, and there was a lot of trauma associated with that. And I can remember, from a sports perspective, being told at a school sports day, well, why are you Black and you can't run fast? And from that day on, never ever wanting to put myself out there, and therefore missing out on lots of opportunities to participate in sport, because I felt as though the finger was pointed at me and I wasn't good enough. And that's why I was constantly told, you're not good enough because of the way you look. You're not good enough because of your hair. You're not good enough. It was that constant dialogue. So, you internalize that. You tell yourself you're not good enough. And throughout my life, I've constantly feel as though, not only because of my color, but because of that childhood experience, I'm constantly trying to prove that I'm good enough. And I think going into, starting running when my last baby was born, that was 11 years ago, and then getting into ultra running and very much focusing on trail running, there aren't very many Black people in the UK that trail run. This is the reason that we set up Black Trail Runners. There is a big problem with diversity on the trails in the UK. And me being a woman of color, being on a start line and looking around and seeing no one that looks like me, no one that has shared the same lived experience as me. Yeah, as Jenny says, you feel other. It's not the overt racism on the start line, but it's the look. It's the cliques that form that maybe you don't feel you're part of or can infiltrate. And I think that, I've had some really nasty experiences on especially European trails where I've been in unsafe situations and people have run on by. And so therefore, it creates a feeling in your head of, well, maybe I shouldn't be here. but absolutely, in my mantra is I deserve to be here just like every single other person. This is not a trail purely for said race. This is a trail for all races. So I constantly tell myself that when I'm in situations that may not feel as welcoming as they should.
It's really interesting, these different mental mantras that I think as a person of color that we have to create for ourselves, even just to show up and participate in a sport that's supposed to be accessible and welcoming to all. Thank you for sharing. Maurice, why don't you go next? Hey.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing before me. I've struggled with feeling the validation of feeling that I belong in the sport. I have struggled with that. But with that being said, let me finish with growing up. I participated in every youth athletic, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to do that. But I never excelled in any of those sports. I was always the last person picked for the team. And I very much can relate to the comment she made about, well, how come you can't run fast? You know, so I'm biracial. So my mom is white, my dad is black. I have a lighter skin tone than some, and I like to say this: I've been the darkest in the room, and I've been the lightest in the room, and I've experienced what that means in many different situations. I like to shine a lot of light on the fact that I've directly benefited from being included in the running community to an extent where I said, well, hey, you let me in. Well, let me show you what I can do. I can show you. I'm so freaking grateful to be included. So now, and I use that as like a validation because I still struggle with the, hey, do I belong here? Am I good enough? I'm not as fast as that guy. I'm not on that level. I never competed Division I. I'm not a former athlete. I'm not someone looking to break records. So I struggle with that daily. However, I use the, hey, but you let me in attitude. Hey, you let me show up. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cheer for everybody around. And I really embrace that cheerleader role to overcome my own struggles. And it helps. It helps. It's a constant reminder of, yes, Maurice, you do belong here. You are, you might not be as fast and strong as everybody else, but guess what? You're going to make up for that with some positive vibes. You're going to let everybody know, hey, you're doing great. This is your first 5K. This is your first attempt at a marathon. Awesome. Let me tell you about when I thought I was doing good in my first marathon. And I get so excited. I thrive off of the community. And then to touch on the fact that I know I hope I'm not getting too far off the topic right there. My struggle with feeling included is because of my past. I'm a former hardcore drug addict, someone that you would cross the street to avoid looking at or striking up a conversation to. So now it's like I'm part of this new community where I do feel welcomed. I do feel welcome, but that past, it creeps up on me. Hey, well, what if they judge you for this? What if they know about this? What if they think this because of your past? And because I struggle with that. I struggle with that, and some of it is based on skin color. Some of it is just based on me being a former criminal. I'm a convicted felon, and it's tough to. And some people, it rubs them the wrong way. When we talk about mental illness, hopefully I'm not getting too much off topic there.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so being very vocal about being a former hardcore drug addict, overcoming crack addiction, overcoming male prostitution, those types of things, it weighs down on me because I've been judged. I've been called certain names like, well, hey, you're a former crackhead, big deal. You're exercising now. You found a new addiction. And that stuff stings, but I'm such a positive person that I would never let one negative comment, one person's perspective, I would never let that define me. It creeps up on me, but I try to outshine it with positivity. And hey, I'm clean, I'm sober. I love seeing teenagers that are on the right path and not making devastating decisions. And if I see them making devastating decisions, I'm like, hey, my name's Maurice, listen to my story. I overcame drugs and alcohol. Don't let it get to that point. This is what you can do. I'm in a running community. What do you do in your spare time? Like boom, 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 boom. And that's, I found a little spot in my local community where people are like, hey, there's the guy that talks about drugs. And I've had people come up to me and say, hey, can you talk to my younger brother? Can you do this? Can you talk to my son? I think he's doing more than smoking marijuana. And I've heard your story. I know you're not afraid to talk about it. So I always feel very grateful that I do feel like I have a little spot in this community. It might not be competing at a high level in the sport, but I use the, hey, you let me in attitude, and I just like to spread a lot of gratitude.
And you're really, really great at it, Maurice. I mean, even right now, I'm like, yes, I'm like feeding off of the energy that you have. And it really is a testament of who you are as a person, that you channel the feeling of, you know, not belonging or not being whatever blank enough, but you channel that into gratitude. And you bring that, I know, like just watching your stories too on the regular, you know, you bring that every time you show up anywhere, and it's truly incredible. So thank you. And Sha.
Yeah, before I say anything, I just want to say to Maurice, thank you for sharing that. It's very commendable for you to talk about your experience, and I'm sure that helps a lot of people that may be, you know, in a similar or, you know, situation to what you was in before. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
In terms of myself, I'm a bit like Jenny. I think growing up in a Pakistani family, it was all about, you got to be an engineer or a doctor or a banker. Sports is not going to take you anywhere. You know, it's not going to work for you. So football was my vice. Loved playing football when I was younger, and I was brought up in a metropolitan town, Hackney. So we had a lot of immigrants there from Pakistan, Turkey, Africa, Jamaica. You know, there was everybody, but there was a lot of racism. But it was all about football. It wasn't running, so it wasn't a barrier to running, but just generally to sport, like playing in the playgrounds and after school clubs. You know, if you scored a winning goal in soccer, I know in America you call it soccer, you'd be called a effing Packy for scoring the winning goal because you're not white. So I went through that. But in terms of running, I never really had any barriers because I didn't start running until like 2006. And by then I was like 33. So I was working professionally. I'd become a bit overweight, you know, had some bad habits, smoking, drinking too much. And so I just took running as a sport. But in terms of barriers, I didn't really notice any barriers for myself. But then what I did see was in magazines, like running magazines, there wasn't many people that looked like me. So there's nothing encouraging me to run. I was more running for myself and doing it because that's something I wanted to do for myself. And now when I look at it, it's like fast forward 14 years, sorry, from when I first started running. I'm part of a multicultural community in London, like London Crew's a multicultural running crew. It was started by Charlie Dark. He's the founder. And he started it for his friends who were black at the time and others as well, to trying to get them running and getting them fit. And so, yeah, I jumped into that 5 years ago and I absolutely love it. And the communities around London, yeah, there's a good mix. And I think with the communities, there's not much of a barrier. I think it's more the running clubs, the athletics clubs, where they're more white middle class. So there could be a problem to sort of get accepted because you have to be fast. And in a way, it sort of makes sense, but then again, it doesn't. It's like, you know, there needs to be some opportunities for people to improve as well. So yeah, but personally, not a big issue because I know why I run. I've got my running. My why is it's like my meditation. So that's what I do to troubleshoot issues in my mind and to make myself feel good. But I've been injured for the best part of a year, so I've had to find other meditations. But that's me.
Thanks,
Sha, thank you for sharing that. And to all the panelists, thank you for sharing your lived experiences. It's really humbling to hear, and I really appreciate it. And I know for so many people, this year has been really challenging. So, starting with you, Jenny, how have the events of 2020 impacted your physical and mental well-being?
It has been a hard year. That would be an understatement. I think just even like just strategically, right? I had kids who were in school and suddenly not in school, and being a working mother and used to seeing clients in person and having to pivot into telemedicine and all of these different things that were unexpected, you know. And I think initially I was in crisis mode. I was like, we'll just power through, it'll be fine, do all the things, overproduce, overwork, you know, like it'll be fine. And then I think you eventually hit that exhaustion phase, right, where you're burned out. And I think I'm now in that space where I'm acknowledging the burnout and knowing that I cannot function at this previous level at which I was operating at. And, you know, Carolyn, you know, mentioned kind of the increased rates of anxiety, depression. I mean, we talk about domestic violence, right? People are trapped in their homes, and so the stressors are now high. And then we talk about the political climate and the racial and social justice climate in the United States. There's a lot of things that are amping up people's anxiety. I mean, I think just election anxiety alone, I think, is enough, right, for a lot of us. And so I think it has been really hard. And yet at the same time, I think it's pushed me to be more strategic about how I cope. Whereas before I would only run maybe twice a week, similar to what Sabrina's mentioned, as a way of, you know, coping with my anxiety, coping with some of my, you know, internal struggles. Now I've committed to moving my body daily. And that may not mean running. That may mean just a 20-minute walk, right? I don't run competitively, so I can't speak to that element. But I think when I finally was able to say, I'm running as a form of prevention and not to hit any speed or distance benchmarks for myself, and could let go of that, that was important. I mean, that was the piece where I was like, I'm doing this because this keeps me healthy and able to show up well. So yeah, so it's been a tough year, but I have hope too, right? Just meeting y'all, like I feel so much hope because I know that there's goodness that exists on this planet too, and good, yes, amazing people doing incredible work in their communities, and there's goodness here.
Thank you for sharing that. And like you said, there's been so much uncertainty. And it's been ongoing for quite a while. And like you said, it's now sort of time to stop and face it, even though it's still uncomfortable. But I like the fact that, you know, still maintain that degree of hope, because we need that. Thank you for sharing that. So Sabrina, can we move to you now?
Yeah, I mean, I suffer with intense mum guilt, you know. My oldest child is 24, my youngest is 11, my two grandchildren are 18 months and 9 months. So my youngest grandchild was born at the beginning of February, so just going into our kind of lockdown phase here in the UK. And I have always been very, very driven. I ran a PR company for 15 years. I did really, really well in that. And then I found that I absolutely had a passion for empowering women through exercise, you know, helping women to address their mental health issues through well-being and fitness, and retrained as a personal trainer and a run coach. And so what I did in lockdown is I gave. I was running 15 Zoom classes a week, every single fitness discipline. It was virtual run crews. It was go, 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 go. And I didn't realize just how I was using that busyness, that giving, to my own mental health detriment. And I only realized it coming out of lockdown in the UK at a time when the Black Lives Matter movement was really prominent with the murder of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And so to go from that high intensity to a high emotional intensity was really, really difficult. And my mental health had really taken a nosedive, because I was emotionally spent, mentally spent, you know, trying to deal with the amount of inquiries that were coming in from, you know, people wanting to know how to do the right thing around BLM And it was, for lots of Black, brown, minority ethnic people, it was a very traumatic and very high energy and highly emotional time. And I love the trails. I love trail running for the space that it gives me. And so therefore I found that the longer that I was going on my runs, just to try and find a semblance of peace, of serenity, of a way to clear my mind. So like Jenny said, whereas I was very pace orientated, I was very ascent orientated, I just went to, I need to run until I feel some calmness. And I believe that everything is sent to us for a reason. So, in July or in June, when I was talking to other Black runners about the lack of diversity in trail running, and we created Black Trail Runners, that it gave me something that I absolutely wholeheartedly believed needed to be addressed. And I get so much joy from starting to help to make that change, or put steps in place to make that change, to encourage more Black people into the trail running community in the UK, that I now feel that rather than fighting fire, I was going to say I am the fire, but what I mean is that instead of fighting fire, I now feel as though, whereas I felt I didn't know what my purpose was, now I really believe that I do. And it's really helped me to regain some balance in my life, where it was go, go, go. And now it is still go, but there's real passion behind it.
That was really powerful, and I like the awareness of the process through the year of being busy, giving of yourself almost to step away from what's actually happening. And then, like you said, you needed to give yourself some time just to face it and just make a decision of what is actually important to you, and have that moment. And actually, like you said, there's actually some good that's come from it. So thank you for sharing that. And let's move on to Maurice.
Thank you for sharing that. That was very awesome. I actually, this was one of my favorite questions, believe it or not, on the list. 2020, it's affected me both mentally and physically. I struggle from, for lack of a better term, just getting too comfortable in a routine. And I was fortunate enough to not be out of work for too long. So my routine didn't change. However, the comfort of being in that same routine when everything else was kind of at an uncertainty and definitely almost a standstill. Everything was slowed down. I'm in the Northeast here in Rhode Island, about 50 miles away from Boston, Massachusetts. So, and a very diverse area, which I've always benefited from. But I immediately saw a decrease in my activity, even in my daily run streak activity. It was almost a decrease in effort and distance, and it took me a while to realize it. And along with that came some immediate weight gain. So the decrease in activity, combined with me looking for comfort food, I had this extra time at home. I was eating unhealthy. I was doing things to kind of, I said, Maurice, you're supposed to be this positive guy. And I was actually struggling in the middle of being quarantined and the beginning of the pandemic, and when things were shut down. I was struggling with feeling like my whole personality that I put out on social media, I was struggling with that whole thing. I was like, Maurice, what are you doing? Are you really this positive guy? And every day it really weighed on me. And then when the weight gain came, I was almost ashamed to be out there. And it really hit me hard when the weight gain came. It was, and I know that sounds a little shallow, but I struggled with it. So I just immediately put the brakes on any negative thoughts. I said, you can fix this, you can fix this. That's all you talk about, is being positive and momentum and being grateful for what you have, and what's wrong with you. Why aren't you trying harder? So I immediately flipped it, and I said, let's increase the activity, let's increase the effort. And I just made a more mindful decision every single day to eat a little bit healthier, spend more time exercising, whether it was 45 minutes on the road opposed to 15 minutes on the road. Little things like that with a little bit more swagger and oomph in it, I like to say. And then that gave me back the confidence to be like, hey, you're right. I am still positive. These races are getting canceled, but we still have a lot to be grateful for. And it just kind of helped me, give me a spark that I needed personally, and to just to not, I don't want to forget to touch on the fact that during all those things, when I'm feeling comfortable and I'm looking for comfort food and I'm in that routine and I'm just kind of being complacent with keeping the run streak alive and not really training for a real destination race or anything like that, because everything's virtual, things are getting canceled. I was invited to Boston again with the charity invite. It was tough because everything got canceled in the middle of the fundraising campaign. So those things all weigh down, and then you have friends that are dealing with it in different ways as far as races being canceled and stuff. There was a couple of weeks where I actually thought of the old Maurice, of going back to sneaking around with some alcohol and drugs. And I had to snap out of that. And I said, how are you going to be the person that falls victim to a drug and alcohol relapse just because there's a pandemic, just because things are different, just because you're not everything you talk about, being able to embrace change and adapt and attack everything that's in front of you. Don't be the guy that can't be true to his word. So I had to have these conversations with myself every single day to overcome. The weight started coming off. The little bit of swagger started coming back in my daily runs, and I felt better about myself. And then I felt better about being out there and being vocal again. So now it's very easy for me. I would never not give somebody the chance to 2020 has affected everybody differently, and you can't take that for granted. If we've made it this far, you need to give yourself a round of applause, because it's been trying.
That was really powerful, Maurice, and I really like the fact that you were so honest. You gave us an account of like Maurice pre-COVID, during COVID, and where you are, I guess where we are now. And like so many people could relate to that. You know, you question who you are. You know, I'm this person. What? And it's so uncomfortable. It's not something we've experienced before. And like you said, you went back. You had that conversation with yourself. You spoke back to those voices, and you said, "Look, had the hard conversation. Like, this is who I was before. This is how I became it. If I can get through that, I can get through this." I think so many people can relate to that, and just looking at the experiences that we've got strength inside us. So that was really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to
You're welcome.
move on to Sha.
Thanks, Maurice and Marcus. Yeah, I think for me, as I mentioned in the last question, I became injured about a year ago, just after New York Marathon. Not that I ran it, but just after that, I played some football and I got injured. So then I started swimming and going to the gym. So that was my meditation, because running was no longer. And so I was getting into the swimming. It was all great. February, I was in the big pool. I was quite afraid of deep water. And then came about mid-March, and then what's his name? Boris comes on the screen and says, "That's it. Everyone's at home. The pandemic has arrived." And yeah, that was a shock to the system. Couldn't go swimming, couldn't go to the gym, can't run. So I was stuck. So I had to try and work out what I'm going to do now. But on top of that, you know, I'm sure most people can relate to this. There was uncertainty in the air about work. So I work for myself. I run a wellness business and I work with corporates. And generally, January to February for me is a time where I connect with them more and we get to start working out some contracts. So April onwards, I know who I'm working with and the work I'm going to be doing. So because everyone was going home, middle of March, you can forget about that. You know, all the contracts were put on hold. My mum's, she's quite old. She's 82. So I'm living with her, supporting her. She's a wonderful person. So I've got her there. There's pressure on me. Work's not happening. There's uncertainty in the air. I'm not fit. So a bit like Maurice is like, so I started putting on weight, eating unhealthily. I couldn't do any exercise. I could do other exercises, but I'd been lazy. But then I turned to the Be More You community, which I founded, and we started hosting online sessions within a couple of weeks of the pandemic. And that was great because I was holding a space for people to come and talk about what we was going through. So it was great because we was all able to talk about our problems and feel valued and supported. It's not that we could solve anyone's problems. There was a channel to put them through, and it made us feel like we're all human and we're all going through the same stuff. So that was really important for me. So we've been running those sessions every week since the pandemic, and since it started, and to now we're still continuing. But yeah, I struggled a lot. Didn't really earn much money, and I was worried that my business was going to fold. Up until about 6 weeks ago, I thought I'm going to take 2 weeks out. I thought I'd go abroad for 2 weeks and go and have a think about what I'm going to do. And my mental health did struggle quite a bit because I found myself sort of slipping into anxiety, stress, and a little bit of depression in the early days. I'd jump into bed and just stay in bed all day and try and sleep it off, the feelings. But that didn't last long, because when I started talking to the community and we was all around each other, that made me feel better within myself. But I don't think I really accepted the pandemic like I was in it and that I was coping. I thought I was coping, but I wasn't. And then the Black Lives Matter stuff happened as well on top of that. And then I definitely knew I wasn't coping well, because then that brought back memories from me being a child. And, the whole world was up in arms about what happened to George Floyd and the people before him, the injustices and inequalities in America and around the world in other places too. So, we actually held some Black Lives Matter talks ourselves to talk on the topic. And, I was asked to talk about my experiences. So then that haunted me, took me back to when I was like a teenager in Hackney and what I had to go through. But then it just made you feel how big this problem really is in the world, and it still is. It's massive right now. And just fast forwarding on from that, it's like I said, 6 weeks ago I went on a holiday just to get away from it all and to think about what's my next move going to be. And then thankfully work started improving a bit, and then the restrictions sort of lifted a bit as well by then. So I was able to start going back to the gym in September. So that was great for me. Started getting into a routine. And I started meditating probably about 6 weeks after the pandemic started, 20 minutes a day. I read a book on mindfulness. And that said, if you meditate for 20 minutes a day, it will lower your depression, anxiety, and stress scores. So I just went into that mode, and that's been a big help for me, meditation. If I meditate in the morning, I have a great day. But that just slows everything down and brings me into the present moment. So that's one of my things that I turn to. Yeah, I think that's it. I can go on, but I think that probably sort of gives you a gist of how it's been for me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably and openly. And I mean, the year really has been just difficult in many complicated and complex ways. And I think it is really incredible and hopeful of the human spirit to hear about how even in the midst of the depression or the anxiety and that the weight of living, that you, and I think everyone here who has shared, we're all able to create something new out of this, I think, kind of like a death of life as we knew it before, and I didn't realize that the virtual workshops that you had been hosting really only came out through, the last several months. And yeah, that is, I just think that is such a testament, to humanity, to the human spirit. So moving to the next question, really, I think many of you had already touched upon different practices and things that you have learned to do to take care of yourselves through this time. Both the things that you recognize were maybe not so healthy and not so great, and then also the things that you've learned now that you seem to be taking forward with you into whatever this next season of life is going to be like. But I was wondering if each of you could go around and share some of the things that have been helpful and unhelpful that you have tried to build a healthier mindset for yourself. And Jenny, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I'll go with, I guess, the helpful things first. No, let's do the unhelpful. Let's start with that. So I know that when I am stressed out, I tend to, I get real rigid. Like I'm like, must be so, right? Children must be so, or situations must be so. And so I think in trying to provide structure, I start to agree to things, right? I start, oh yes, I'll do this workshop. Sure, I'll do this. Sure, I'll have this chat. And I think, as I mentioned before, kind of that overproduction is a way that I cope. And it is so not helpful. And I know that, and yet I feel pulled to these things because I think they make me feel like there's a focus. And so I don't have to deal with the feelings, right, that are there. And so October was that month where I said, yes, right? I'm here too, which I want to be. And that's the struggle, is that when you're passionate about the things you do, you want to be there, but sometimes it's at a really high cost. And so I've decided November, December are going to be my no months, where I say no to lots of things, right? And I set boundaries and I protect my rest and restoration, knowing that this is the long haul, right? That this pandemic will likely continue for several more months here, at least. And so I know that that has been not helpful. I think with the pandemic, we didn't know what it looked like. And so I had really shut down my outside contacts, like I wasn't seeing friends as much as I could, or things like that. And even seeing family, right? We were not really seeing my parents. That was really hard. And I think in the last month or so, we have said, okay, like, let's wear the masks. Like, if we sit outside, that has to be part of it. I remember one time, like, embracing my mother after all of this, after months of seeing her from afar or talking by phone. And it like crushed me, because I realized how much I needed that human contact. And I think the pandemic, in shutting those aspects down, was really harmful for my mental health. So I now am prioritizing, moving my body, whatever that looks like, and being able to accept that that can look like just a calm walk. This morning I walked for 20 minutes. I was like, I should be running, was my thought when I woke up. And I said, you know what? I'm going to walk and just enjoy that it's 50 degrees in Houston, which is not often the case. And then the human connection piece. And yeah, I think the boundaries piece. I think for myself, time and space in solitude is key. So when Sha was talking about meditation, right, those types of things, I think being able to create space for that has been extremely helpful as well.
Yes, I'm taking notes of setting boundaries, find ways for human connection, and moving my body. These are all also things that I think many of us have all slowly learned to identify our actual needs, for our well-being. Thank you for validating these needs. Sabrina, why don't you share next?
I think listening to Jenny, there was a lot of nodding, just total, total, yes, that's me. I think that what didn't serve me well was to want to be in control. So from the moment Boris Johnson on the 23rd of March said, we are on lockdown, you can only go out for 1 hour a day, I wanted to be in control. I wanted to control. And for this woman, that trying to control things in a pandemic is not the best thing for my mental health at all. So I would fight day to day between wanting to be in control, but realizing I need to let go, but then I'd let go a little bit and want to take it back. So I'd let go, take it back. And that struggle, that tug of war is, no one wins. And I certainly wasn't winning. So I think the biggest lesson that I learned through that process is day to day, there is not a lot at the moment that I'm in control of, but that which is meant for me, so that which is meant to be, will be. And that's been a massive learning curve for me. For years and years and years, I felt as though the only way to feel valued, or to feel that I deserved my place on this earth, was to control the situations around me like a chessboard, to make the move, or to dictate the next 2 moves that I needed to make in order to be good enough. And now I wake up of a day and I always take 5 minutes to have quiet time. And that time is about me trying to reconnect with that inner voice, that real essence of me that knows that which is right for me to be doing that day, and which can so easily be drowned out by the devil on my shoulder. So, and the devil on my shoulder will tell me, and it's often when my anxiety is high, or when I know that I feel that I'm slipping into a bout of depression, the devil on my shoulder will tell me, you need to do that. You need to be in control. You're not good enough. They're not going to like you. Nobody likes you. Nobody, all of those voices. And I think when I don't give myself that 5 minutes at least a day to try and find that calm, that peace, whether it's on a trail run, or whether it's walking my dog, or just spending time with my children, I really feel that. So I've made that a non-negotiable. Like, it's a non-negotiable now, that self-care time, that quiet time, in order to slow down my mind, in order to really hear that. You can call it God, you can call it the universe, whatever it may be, is a non-negotiable. And I think that we have to, in this period, in the world as it is at the moment, I think that in order to manage our mental health, we have to create strategies, or create tools that we can use every day that are non-negotiables for us, whether that's running, whether it's a walk, whether it's some meditation, whether it's just fueling your body with food that makes you feel so good, rather than where I go, which is very high carb, very high sugar, when I'm not feeling too good, and that makes me feel worse. It makes me always feel worse. But I know that about myself, and I try and fuel myself with food that makes me feel good. So I think that, creating those non-negotiables and the time for those non-negotiables is absolutely critical in managing our mental health going forward.
Thank you, Sabrina. Yeah. I mean, when we think about ourselves as athletes, it makes a lot of sense that when we're training, we implement all these different lifestyle habits to make us physically better at performing as an athlete, but we need to do the same for our mental health. And I love the way that you phrase it and frame it as daily practices that are non-negotiable, and even just 5 minutes of waking up, and instead of reaching for my phone or something, waking up and just thinking to yourself, who am I and what is my purpose, and like connecting with who you are and what your values are and what your identity is, not what the world might dictate as standards, but just how important that is to be able to then go into the day knowing who you are, even if you can't control anything else, right? That's so profound and so important. Thank you. Maurice.
All right, thank you, Jenny and Sabrina. That was awesome. And I felt the same way that Sabrina said. She was nodding the whole time. Jenny touched on so many things, the boundaries, the saying no. I recently had an incident where I just wasn't myself. I'm a sales professional, and finding the balance through all of this. I was only out of work for a couple of weeks. So through all of this, I was able to maintain my same routine. The run streak for the last 4.5 years has been my daily routine that allows me a minimum of 20 or 30 minutes to myself. And I call it a by myself meeting. And I think I stole that from an old hip hop song. It's literally an intimate by myself meeting where I give myself, I check myself daily. And sometimes if I don't get that done in the morning, it does affect my daily routine. But where I'm going with this is, as a sales professional, being very busy, even throughout the pandemic, and then trying to find a balance between home life, relationship life, family, work, and then personal fitness, personal side hustle, whatever you want to call it, all of those things that we all try to fit on our plate on a day-to-day basis. I just wasn't saying no to anything. I was saying yes to everything. And I was just, I can do it. I can do it. I can see you. I can spend time with mom. I can spend time with dad. I can do this. I can do this. And I snapped. It wasn't. And where I'm going with this is, it was recently, and it was at the workplace. And I'm very fortunate that I was surrounded by some true friends that just really helped de-escalate the situation. Because if not for that, it could have turned ugly. And it was just a situation where I had gone day in and day out for probably a good 8 days, just going nonstop. I call it bell to bell. Both the part-time job, the full-time job, the family life, the home life, and these are things that everybody deals with every day. We're all going from bell to bell, I like to call it. But I wasn't saying no to things that I used to say no to that would allow me to have, whether it was 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon, or maybe it was 3 hours on a Wednesday morning, where you can have that extra cup of coffee, where you can read, where you can meditate, where you can do some yoga or some stretching, something extra just for you. I wasn't allowing that, and it affected me, and I got to a breaking point, and I wanted to share that because it happens to all of us. And I had to check myself 100 times that day, because I said, Maurice, look at what just happened. This could have been worse, just because you, Mr. Positive, Mr. Strong Mindset, Mr. You gotta follow your own rules, is basically what I said. And I wanted to thank Jenny again for, it's as simple as just as saying no to some things. You have to say no. You have to give yourself that little personal space, whether it's alone time, whether it's the walk, whether it's whatever it is. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thanks, Maurice. I know it seems like there's been this recurring theme of us, everyone needing to learn to say no. And it reminds me of that saying of how not every good thing is the right thing for you right now, right? But at the same time, I understand just that feeling of wanting to say yes to good things, to hold on to the good things in life, but then also to create this sense of productivity or direction or purpose, or sense of control when life feels out of control. So thank you, Maurice, for sharing.
You're welcome.
And Sha, I know you had mentioned earlier some of the things that you have put into practice that have been helpful for you. Do you want to elaborate a little more on those things?
Yeah. First of all, I'll just say, I agree with, Sabrina, Maurice, and Jenny as well. It's like resonated with me, a lot of those things. Boundaries a big one, because I think a lot of us, when we went into the pandemic, all of a sudden we found we had more time, or we think we had more time. Before, we had more time than we had, and that allowed people to call you any time of the day, even if you was trying to work. Everyone wanted to FaceTime you. Everyone wanted to message you, and you just made yourself available. You thought, well, we're in a pandemic. Yeah, I'm available. I'm gonna speak to everybody. But that was very detrimental. After a couple of months of that, it was way too much. And then boundaries had to be set, and it definitely affected my mental health, like being always open, and then people just taking advantage of that and always calling you and being on the phone for an hour or 2 hours, and then at the end of it, you're asking yourself, why am I doing this? Because it's not going anywhere, it's not taking you anywhere, but it just felt like that was how people were doing it. So then what I did, I started doing a lot of things. One of the things was practicing gratitude. and I think I've got it here somewhere. I've got a jar, and I just 3 things every day I put in the jar what I was grateful for, whether that was the sun shining on my face, whether I drank out of my favorite coffee mug today, or I had a nice call with someone, I got a good email from work or something, whatever it was, I'd be grateful. Just having the attitude for gratitude, that was really important for me. And I think having a routine and showing up for work in the morning, so getting ready like I was going to work, rather than just wearing shorts and a t-shirt and being at the desk like most of the world. Of course I did do that, but I had to snap out of that and get serious. I thought, you know, if I want the world to take me seriously, I have to take myself seriously. So I had to get into that mode. And I think exercising was important. I was really lax, so that wasn't I was unhelpful, as I mentioned earlier. So moving, so I started to go walking. So take walks out in nature. So I'm lucky I don't live in Hackney now, I live in Essex now, and it's a nature reserve. So I can go for a nice walk, see some ducks, see some birds, some geese. There's a nice water there, ponies. So I'm like, that's on my doorstep. I'm not even going to see that. Instead, I'm stuck on the phone. So I started going out for walks more, tried to be healthy more, still being unhealthy too, because there's a balance there. And yeah, just trying to take things at a time. And then relaxation techniques, being compassionate to myself, not being hard on myself, trying to treat myself like I would treat a friend, rather than, because, you know, as a humans, we have a negative default bias. When things go wrong, we punish ourselves. And generally, when things go wrong, we compound a problem by doing something that's going to be unhelpful, rather than that's going to be helpful. So I try and look into my toolbox and say, what are the things in my toolbox that can help me? Go for a walk, call a friend, have a healthy meal. What can I do? So everyone is different. So everyone knows what works for them. You know, it could be journaling, it could be listening to music, watching a movie. Everyone's got their own coping mechanism. So it's about tapping into what worked for me.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think what's quite clear from listening to all 4 responses is that the pandemic has created multiple layers of stress and uncertainty. And like you said, it's created a blur of boundaries. People are being more open. It's always going back to what Jenny was saying. It's about learning to stop, to say no, take care of yourself, slow down, moving to what Maurice was saying. And you all touched on, I like that sort of phrase of having his running courses, running the meeting by myself, creating that time to protect your peace, and protect that self-care, because it's so vital. So there's so many sort of shared themes there. So thank you all for sharing that. And moving to the final question, from your perspective, how can the running community, both individually and collectively, foster wellness and inclusion in running? Jenny, can you lead us into that answer, please?
I'm probably the least qualified to speak on this because I'm not really in a running community, and I've actually never been in one, although now after hearing y'all, I'm like, I need to get in on these running groups. So I can really only speak to kind of maybe how this manifests within like mental health communities. And I think one of the biggest things we can do is really just talking. Like everybody's spoken about how, right, these like workshops, these groups of people that you're with, even Maurice talking about working with, you know, like at-risk youth. When we talk, right, we embody ideas that then manifest in the universe, right? And so I think one of the things that I've been mindful of doing is talking to people about, right, where do Asians stand? Where do we exist in this world of racial justice, right? Like, because we're in a very weird position. We are not white, but we're also not black. And so where does this, right, this wondering, and how can we be a part of this in a way that is useful, right? How can we move from maybe complacency or complicity or silence into a place where we can utilize, right, who we are to help advance, right, these issues. And so I think just being able to talk, and even like talking with people in your spheres of influence, right? It's not about having necessarily a platform, but you have people in your lives where maybe they've never questioned inclusivity or they've never discussed diversity. Maybe these aren't on their radar, but now they can be because you're a safe and trusted person where they can have conversations about this with. I'm in a group consultation with several psychologists, and two of them are white and one is Latina and myself. And so when all of this happened, right, there is this kind of idea that as mental health professionals, we must talk about racism. We must talk about this systemic level injustices because that impacts people's mental health. And so how can we overlook this glaring issue, right, that impacts so many people? And so one of my white colleagues was just like, I feel scared talking about this. I feel like I'm going to say the wrong thing. And I think in that group, we had the safety to be like, you're allowed to wonder and question and say the wrong thing. Right. And so I think when we talk about inclusion and diversity and what that means to people and what does it mean to invite others into those conversations with us, I think that's potentially where growth can happen, even if it's messy and it's not done perfectly.
Do you know what, listening to what you said, it reminded me of a conversation I had with Knox Robinson on my podcast, and I said, what do I do with my platform in terms of, you know, Black Lives Matter? And he sort of said similar to what you said, start where you are, speak in your sphere, use your platform. And I think that's where it starts from, because like you said, people do trust you and that you know. So thank you for that. And I think also the final point as well, just people do feel afraid of saying the wrong things. And, you know, like you said, it's going to be messy. No one knows, you know, so I think we're all going to give ourselves some grace just to be open and say those things without too much judgment, I think. So thank you for that, Jenny. And Sabrina, can you share your experiences for this question, please?
I think that certainly in the work that we've been doing with the Black trail running community, I think that the three big barriers that we see to access are around barriers to inclusion, are around access, skills, and representation. And I really believe that uncomfortable conversations can lead to massive change. And I think that in the sphere of representation, you know, you can't be who you can't see. So growing up as a mixed race girl, you know, in a very, very white town, I didn't see any black runners, any black women runners. I didn't see any black men runners. And so therefore, you kind of, if you can't see yourself, how can you even have the belief that you can be that? And I think that when it comes to representation, you know, across media, across social media, across print media and broadcast media, yes, we are starting to see more brands and organizations become more aware that they need to do more. But I think that it's really, really important, those of us that have platforms and those of us that have influence within our communities, facilitate and engage with decision makers both at grassroots level and top level, and have those uncomfortable conversations, because without them we will continue to be in this cycle of nothing changing. And I think what I've seen this year is the power of community, the power of claiming our voice in order to say, you know, this is not okay, you know, this is not okay, and how many voices are so much stronger than one, you know. And I think that I'm not scared to have uncomfortable conversations, because, you know, I've got nothing to lose. You know, I've spent so many years not wanting to put my head above the parapet for fear of the repercussions. And I think now in my life journey and my job as a mother and as a grandmother of mixed race children is to do all I can in order to use my voice and my lived experience to have uncomfortable conversations that lead to change. And yeah, day in, day out, that happens. And the biggest changes I see are from those conversations. So yeah, I'm all about yeah, I'm all about not being comfortable. You know, I grew up not feeling comfortable, and actually it's given me some armor, and those around me, you know, my co-founders of Black Trail Runners, Marcus and other people, you know, we're quite comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. And I think if you have a group of people, your tribe, as I call them, around you, that you're all banging to the you know, the beat of the same drum, then I think there's real power in that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It kind of reminds me, I know we've had this conversation offline, similar to running. You do those workouts that are tough, but it leads to progression. So, and it's a similar type thing in this situation. Like you said, uncomfortable conversations can lead to change. And what's the option? To be uncomfortable and do nothing? That won't change anything. So you're going to be uncomfortable. So why not move it to a positive place? So thank you for sharing that, Sabrina. And let's move on to Maurice.
I take the attitude of, it's my duty. When I say that I'm vocal, I take the attitude of, it's my duty to be like, hey, yes, I'm mixed race. Yes, I've struggled with drug addiction. Yes, I struggle with mental health. But guess what? I'm here. I'm included. Thanks for having me. As far as, and I agree with Sabrina, we are starting to see more people of color in different media fronts, whether it's social, whether it's print. There needs to be more. I think that there needs to be more focus on I hate to use the term plus sizes, but I feel like a lot of runners feel that they don't have a runner's body, and they feel that maybe the gear isn't marketed towards them and so forth, and that's discouraging. You never want to ding somebody's self-esteem or get them discouraged at the very beginning of a fitness journey. So that's something I'd like to see. I do feel pretty strongly that in being in the Northeast over here in the United States, we benefit from being a diverse group. Don't get me wrong. There's still racism everywhere, and I did want to touch on that as well. I've witnessed gross injustices from local to higher end, everything as far as the BLM movement goes and the law enforcement and stuff. But I am very vocal about the fact that I've benefited from being treated with respect. So I do want to say that. I'd like to what I would like to see is more people just being a voice. Someone like yourself, Marcus. I've been inspired by you just because, and I don't know how to put this into words, because you're a man of color, because you're a man out there grinding, because you're not afraid to say, you know, I was a 443 guy, and watch me get to where I am now. Like, I've been following you, and I'm inspired by you. You've never shied away from talking about mental health. You took a minute to meet me when we ran into each other in person, and it was super genuine and super exciting. I'm drawn into the community by that, and I'm like, hey, who's this guy? Look at him. I want to be like that. Let me be a voice. Let me tell others, hey, it's okay. You don't know what's going on. You're brand new. You're a person of color. You've struggled with this. Just come on in. We run. We have a local community. We do this. And that's what I would like to see. More people just getting up, getting involved, and bringing people along with them.
I really appreciate that, Maurice. It was great meeting you back in Boston 2018. So it was
2018.
Perfect weather, really.
With the ponchos.
I know. That was crazy. But to be honest, though, we all give each other confidence. Seeing people like yourself, you know, when you see your tribe talking about it, then it gives you confidence to kind of be yourself and express it. So hearing what you're saying is like the same sort of thing, the feelings replicated. And like you said, I think more people just need to use their voice, and like, it doesn't have to be in a massive platform. So I appreciate you. So thank you for that. And so Sha, let's wrap up with you for this question.
Yeah, I think in terms of when it comes to, you know, I'll start off with the race relations, and, you know, whether it's a company, whether it's an individual, I think it's not about making a statement. It's more about your behavior. It's about what you do next. You know, like putting a black square up is fantastic, great. Putting up a quote or two, or resharing a story, or saying Trump is X, Y, and Z. We don't back him. That's one thing. But what are you doing on the ground? What's your behavior like? Who are you checking in with? Are you having conversations? And it's not about people having to have all the answers. It's about making an effort. You know, you can go and educate yourself. The World Wide Web is out there. Everything you need is out there. Even myself, as a person of color, even I educated myself after the death of George Floyd, because we all need to introspect ourselves. We all need to have a look deep inside ourselves, our families, our friends, our colleagues, our community. You know, when has there been a time where we might let something slip by and not said anything? Are we going to do that again? You know, it's easy to put up support, you know, but it's about your behavior long term. That's more important. You know, are we going to change over time and do the right thing? And like with these magazines and companies and brands all jumping on the bandwagon, because, you know, it could be for two things. Some are quite genuine in their approach. Others are trying to take advantage of it like a fashion, so that they can make more sales and make more profit. And, you know, reaching out to people like Sabrina. I'm not saying the people that have us reach out to you are those people, but I'm talking about those type of organizations that are trying to get Black people, people of color on their magazines or inside. What I'd like to see is to see it reflected in their boardroom, their staff, their headcount, how many people are of color, how many are Black. Let's see it. Let's see it for real. Let's not just see it on the magazine now, because that's what everyone's going to see, because it's in fashion. We want to see it on your annual report, how many people you have of color in your company. We want to see what you're doing for mental health. You know, this is the sort of stuff I want to see. And I've got 3 tips here, moving on to mental health for organizations. So I wrote down 3 things. And I think one of my tips is what they can do as a minimum is to produce, implement, and communicate a mental health at work plan that promotes good mental health of all employees and outlines the support available for those who may need it. That's the first thing. The second thing is develop mental health awareness among employees by making information, tools, and support accessible. Third thing is encourage open conversations about mental health and the support available when employees are struggling during the recruitment process and at regular intervals throughout employment. Offer appropriate workplace adjustments to employees who require them. So these are just 3 things. I could go on. I've got a big list because this is what I do for a living. But these are the 3 things that I pulled out as a minimum that even a small organization can do. It doesn't take much. And if you are doing more than this, whatever you do, create a report or policy and share it. You know, the LinkedIn's a massive platform. So companies can share what they're doing with other organizations that haven't got the resources to do the right thing. So by sharing knowledge, it's important, like we're sharing knowledge today, we're using our platform to share. And in terms of running groups, what can they do to be more inclusive as well? I think if you're creating a space for people to come together, you have a duty to show responsibility to ensure it's inclusive, and people that come to your community feel valued and supported, and everyone's treated equally. And that's a bare minimum. And you know, that's what is a community. That is what a community is. It's about having access to knowledge and resources that aren't otherwise available. It's about sharing. It's about caring. It's about being your authentic self without fear of judgment or criticism. And it's all about being valued and supported. So that's my thing. I'm pretty passionate about that part, you know, because at the end of the day, we're all in the community. That's why we're all here. The people that are tuned in today, us lot here, we're all part of the community. So we're all in this together. So I think by us all sharing and caring, you know, together we can all make a difference for the positive.
What a great way to wrap it up. And
That was
I think
awesome.
you touched on so many important points there. Like you said, it's not just about making a statement, just doing like black squares and leaving. It's like, what are you doing daily? It doesn't have to be massive. Like you said, we might not have all the answers. No one's got the answers, but it's about doing something which leads towards something better than we were before. And, you know, moving on to, you know, the companies, like you said, I think we want to see the decision makers, we want to see real change in the places that matter rather than the people that want to make change but probably can't make the change. So I think, yeah, that visibility is so crucial. And yeah, and also thank you for sharing those 3 tips. And I think it's so important to, you know, for companies to be aware and you know, protect their employees' mental health, especially anytime generally, but even especially now. So yeah, thank you for that. And although
Yeah.
we've been quite structured in terms of all the questions and how we've gone through the panelists, now we're going to move on to the Q&A. So this is from the attendees who've submitted this to us. So don't feel free like you've got to go through it again through like Jenny all the way to Shah. If you want to answer it, answer it. If you don't want to answer it, don't answer it. And obviously one of these questions is actually specifically for the women. So guys, you're going to have to stand down for this one anyway. So I'll start with this one. So for the women here, when you're running, do you receive any catcalls based on your race? And how do you finish your run feeling empowered, positive, despite these sort of ethnic catcalls directed towards you, if that's even appropriate?
I'm just like, Jenny, yes. The short answer is yes. I have been on the receiving end of catcalls regarding my body, my booty, my, and how do I respond to that? Well, I think, as I say, I've become a lot more confident over the last couple of years, especially in terms of responding to that. So I claim my space, whereas I would run away and almost try and ignore it. Now I will stand up and call that out as appropriate behavior. I have 3 daughters, so I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to my daughters to make it very, very clear that this behavior is not appropriate. But I know that there are many women out there that would not feel confident enough to do that. So what I say to women who I coach, I'm a run coach, I coach a lot of women, is ensure, if that is happening, that you take the details of the construction company or whatever's there, make a phone call or send an email. And often what I've done in the past is to copy in the local MP or the local, council member in charge of planning or whatever it might be, because often it is taking that kind of action around it that can get real results. But yeah, I mean, it's very, very important. It's a massive thing for me in terms of women feeling empowered through runs and not feeling as if they have to hide themselves, they have to shield, they have to pick routes that aren't going past areas where they may be catcalled. That's a really, really important like passion project for me. But yeah, absolutely. As a woman of a certain age and a certain look, yes, it happens, and I claim my ground. Jenny?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't run nearly as much as Sabrina, so I can't say that I'm often in spaces in which this happens, and often I'm in neighborhoods and maybe not in more city urban where there's higher density of people. But I love what Sabrina said about claiming your ground, because I think as an Asian American woman, I've been very much socialized to not stand my ground, because that's seen as disrespectful, that's seen as dishonoring from a cultural standpoint. And so this idea of standing my ground against men, against white people, is very foreign to me. I would say it's something that has developed later in my 30s. But I think that idea of really kind of owning and embodying that I deserve to be here as much as you, and that I have a choice to allow noise in and affect me, or decide not to listen, right? And so I love that idea of writing down, right, the place or the company, or if you're able to identify that, and really bringing that into action beyond that specific run, because I could definitely see myself being in that situation and being scared to not run as much, right, to not run in those spaces anymore. And it's like, well, why don't I deserve to pick and choose where I want to exist? So I love that message from Sabrina.
Thank you both for sharing that. I think it's really powerful. And we're going to move to the final question before we wrap this up. So I'd love to hear the difference that people feel between welcoming environments and inclusive environments. And how do we go from welcoming and not being overtly discriminated against to inclusive, where each person sees themselves reflected and feels invested? So that's an open question to anyone who wants to pick that up first.
I can have a go at this. Open and welcome, the difference. I think it's just, as the word community comes to mind, I'm just going to go through what it means to me. So the word community means to me a place where I feel included, where everyone is welcome, you know, regardless of age, gender, sex, race, and any other differences. A place which opens the doors to living on the edge of your comfort zone. You feel supported to move forward, where you build self-efficacy, self-confidence, open the door to knowledge and experiences that wouldn't otherwise be open to you, and feeling valued and supported. I think that's important. And in order to achieve that, so it's great to welcome, but that's what you want to be inclusive. But how do we achieve it? And I think it's by the people that are at the helm, the leaders. They basically they're vocal about what their community is about, and it comes from the top, and it just ripples right the way through that community or group of people to say that this is who we are, and having open conversations about it. So that's my input. Having open conversations is important.
Thank you, Sha. Does anyone else want to pick this up?
I wanted to hi. So I wanted I'm fortunate enough to be linked up with the local organization, and the gentleman is just very vocal about wanting to include everybody. And he goes as far as saying things like runners, walkers alike, first timers, things like that. And I think that goes a long way to just make people that normally wouldn't feel welcome, to make them feel welcome. And he continues to do that, even though his organization has grown a bit. He continues to touch on the point that this is for you if this is your first time. If this is going to be your first half marathon, come in. Now, I know I'm not touching much on the color and the culture part of it, but he loves to just let everybody know that they're welcome, and I think we just need more of that. I haven't traveled the world, but different places in the country, I've experienced just being treated a little bit different based on whether someone was judging me on my income level, my skin color. So I think what Sha touched on is it always has to start at the top of the organization, because maybe there shouldn't be somebody in a frontline position that can visibly be noticed that they're judging you based on skin color or income or something like that. So hopefully I'm making a little bit of sense with that. I think it does need to start from the top, that we just all need to keep in mind that there should never be any judgment based on skin color, especially, and social class as well.
Totally agree, Maurice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm going to just jump in again to say another thing what groups could do, communities and organizations, is they can say, you know, what isn't welcome at their place. So saying, you know, we don't want anyone coming with ego, or anyone that's got a problem with transgender, or, you know, with people of different races. You can make it clear. You can have a policy, you know, that's your policy. So why don't you have a policy? So us at Be More You, what we're trying to do, we're trying to create a mental health policy. It's like a pledge. So we're going to go to running communities and ask them, do you want to sign this pledge to say you want to aspire to this? So it's not like we're going to do it, but you want to aspire to this. So you give them an opportunity. And the same with race relations. We're going to create a policy and say, look, do you want to aspire to this? And you get them to sign the pledge. So I think, you know, you don't need to do that with us, but you can go out and do your own research and find out what you want your community or group or organization to be about, and let people know this is what we're about. Advertise it. And when you join, like I said about the mental health, when in the recruitment process, you let people know that we're open to mental health. You know, we're about that. We're about supporting that. It's the same with when you join an organization or community. Well, if you're joining us, you need to know this is what we're about, so that there's no misunderstanding. But these are the things people can do. It doesn't take much to write a policy. You know, it could be like a page, a few paragraphs.
I guess it's doing the policy, then obviously actioning it and making sure it's actually not just words and gathering dust as well, is it?
Yeah, but we have to start somewhere. So I think the opportunity is there, saying this is what we are, and then it, definitely, Marcus, you're right. They need to then, it needs to go through, and like I said, when someone joins that community, they need to be told this is what we're about. And if it's not for you, then maybe you want to go to another place.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this a lot, and I like food, and I was thinking about the difference between being welcoming and being inclusive. And the best way, the best analogy I can use for that is you walk into a party and you are offered a drink. There's your welcome. Being inclusive is part of the buying committee that went to the supermarket to buy the drinks and decide upon which drinks should be at said party. So I like to make things, like maybe it's because I'm a mother, but I like to always try and make things as simple as possible. Now, I want to be on the buying committee. I want to be represented on the buying committee. That's the inclusivity that I believe I try and aim for, we try and aim for in Black Trail Runners. Because without representation on the buying committee, you're only ever going to be given a drink, and you might not want that drink. It might not be your favorite. So I think, you know, there should be a variety of people on the buying committee, and that buying committee can be multi-million-pound brand, or it can be a grassroots community group that is looking to engage with BIPOC people, you know. So yeah, that's the kind of, that's the way that's my simple way of seeing it.
I love that, Sabrina.
I love that. That was more than simple. That was a lot. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes into a lot of what Sha was saying earlier too, on a community. An inclusive community really is one where people can show up in all aspects of who they are as a person, with all the different identities and characteristics, and feel like they are seen, that they're supported, that their needs were thought of, that this space was created taking into consideration, you know, every person's different characteristics. Yeah, and so just to kind of wrap up from today, things that were said in terms of how we as in the running community and just community as a whole, that we can be thinking about in moving forward, is to accept that the work will be messy, get used to being uncomfortable, and use our voice, that they're recognizing that there is power in using our voices collectively, and also recognizing that community means having and sharing access to resources and helping people feel valued, supported, where they can grow in their self-efficacy and self-confidence. Very, very, very powerful things. And again, thank you all so much for taking your time and just being thoughtful in preparation for being here for this discussion. Before we go, can each of you go around and share how people might be able to contact you or reach you? And I will have all of your information also in the show notes once we are able to publish this video as well as the audio content. But for now, yes, can you please share either any social media handles or your email, any other way that people might be able to reach you? Jenny, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Asians for Mental Health. And then you can also contact me by my website, www.jennywangphd.com. So yeah, I don't do a lot of technology. That's as far as it goes.
And Sabrina, go ahead.
Yeah, the best way to follow me and to contact me is through Instagram. That's the platform where I share everything. I'm very vocal, and my handle is @SabRunsMiles. So yeah, from there you can get a link to email me. I love engaging, so yeah, DMs, hit me up, and I'm happy to talk.
And Marie?
Oh, I just wanted to give a round of applause to Sabrina for painting that picture with the party and the buying committee.
Yeah.
That was really, I love it. I love it. I'm on Instagram as Marathon Panda Maurice, so all one word. I'm pretty responsive to the DM. Sometimes I'm 24 to 48 hours behind. If anybody would like to send me a personal email, that's definitely okay. And it's all one word, Marathon Panda, the number 15, because I became clean and sober in the year 2015, and that's at iCloud.com. I'm also very easy to find on Facebook. First and last name, Maurice, Lowman. I use the social media community not only as a platform to keep running my mouth, but to hold me accountable. It's what's kept me clean and sober, away from hardcore substance abuse and mental health issues for the last 6 years. So I'm all over social media. I love the platforms, and I love the ability to link up with awesome folks like you. So thank you all for having me. This was so cool.
Thank you, Maurice. And Sha, how can people...
I just want to say, I just love Maurice's passion and the way he speaks. I think it's amazing. It's so infectious. I wish I could be there now and give you a hug, but we probably can't do that in these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can you find me? So Be More You. If you're looking for an inclusive community, every Monday we meet up 6:30 in the evenings in London time. In the US, that would be probably lunchtime. We meet up on Monday nights. If you want to find us on Instagram, bemore.you. We talk about how we're feeling. We share tips and skills on how we can improve our mental health. Everybody's welcome. And then you can use my screen name if you want to find my personal account. And thank you for having me, and thank you for listening.
Sha, I'm jealous of the ponytail. I just cut mine off last week, and I'm in a state of regret right now because you're making yours look very, very good. And I wanted to touch on the fact that I've followed the Rundem crew on Instagram for a while, and I'm heavily influenced by the style and the swag, and I love stuff like that. I just love it.
Awesome.
Good stuff. Get involved.
Marcus, can you tell everyone how people can get in touch with you?
So you can get in touch with me on Instagram at The Marathon Marcus, all one word, or you can find me on my podcast at A Runner's Life or The Checkpoint.
I had to think about that one.
I did actually. It's been a long day.
Oh gosh.
But I was just, the joke was happening. I was thinking about that ponytail comment. I was just like, I can't add anything to this conversation.
Well, yes, thank you all again for being here. And my name is Carolyn Su, and you can find me at either Diverse We Run on Instagram, or you can find me at I Run for the Glory. That's my personal account. Or you can email me at diversewerun@gmail.com. The recording for this will hopefully be published within, let's just say, 48 to 72 hours if I can get all of my my computer things to work accordingly. It will be uploaded onto YouTube, the Diverse We Run channel, and then the audio recording of this will be on a Runner's Life podcast hosted by Marcus Brown within, I guess, the next, I don't even know. I don't want to speak for y'all. Like, it's going to be uploaded next week. But yes, so those will be the places where you'll be able to access the recordings or share it. And yeah, thank you all again for being here, and hopefully we will be seeing each other on the internet soon.
Awesome.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Peace out.
Bye. Peace. Love, peace, and hair grease.